Hey, what's up, guys? In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to recreate something like this, a watercolor painting, using Procreate and Photoshop on your iPad. And we're not just taking this image and putting in Illustrator and using that process that makes it a vector. We're actually using this as inspiration and recreating it. So it'll be a brand new digital version. So stay tuned to the end so you guys can check out the final digital painting. And I hope you guys enjoy it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you. Hey, I forgot to mention that you can find me on Instagram, creative_Rob, and I also just created a Patreon account. So if you want to get some videos that I'm not showing on YouTube, it's more personalized. You'll see some more about my life as an artist, and have some, there's some perks when you become a Patreon. So I would love your support, and well, that's about it, guys. So I hope you enjoy this video. If you want to create something like this, if you want to create this actual painting, I'm going to show you how to do it, and let's have some fun. All right, thanks.
Okay, to start off, this is what we're going to be creating. This was done using Procreate, and at the very end I added some extra effects with Photoshop. So let's continue. This is just a little preview of what we're going to be creating. Okay, I'm going to pause it here. So the first thing we need to do is import a sketch into Procreate. This is the sketch that you're going to want to import. And what you're probably going to have to do is screenshot this image and save it and then import it into your iPad. So once you get this imported, what you're going to do is trace every single one of those raindrops. And then you're going to duplicate that layer and add the shading on top of that. Now the second thing you're going to need is this sketch here. And this is just a fast sketch because what we're going to be doing is painting over that. So you want to screenshot this and import it into your iPad. Alright, now let's go back to the video. So here I am. This is of course sped up. I imported that image. Actually, I have the actual painting imported, but I have this broken down into steps for you. So import the raindrop and start tracing every raindrop. It is a little time consuming, but this is the sacrifice you have to make to create something really cool, Alright, so I have this new layer. It's called raindrops. And also I forgot to mention, once you have your image imported in, you can lower the opacity on that layer so you can see your pen marks better. Now here, this is where I'm on another layer adding the there I just duplicated it. And I'm going to be adding the shadows to the raindrops on the other layer using the airbrush. Okay. So what I've done is created another blank layer, and I'm going in and sketching the cars there. Now, at this point, you'll need to import the car picture I gave you, or told you to screenshot, and start sketching that in on a different layer. This is a very rough sketch, because we're going to be painting over this anyway, and we're going for a look that's somewhat we're not shooting for the most realistic thing. It's more impressionist. Now back to the raindrop layer. There were a few raindrops that I needed to add, fill in with white. I forget why, but that's why. And here I'm separating the ground from the sky. Using the freehand tool and copying and pasting. If you drag down with your 3 fingers, it'll give you the option to copy. That way I can give the skies different colors. It doesn't affect the ground. Now what I did there, ground and sky layers. Alright, now we are coloring in the car layer, and we're not doing it on the sketch. We're creating its own layer, and what you're going to have to do is find out where in that layer tree you're going to need to put this so that it's not behind the ground, and it still needs to be behind the raindrops. And I'm just using the airbrush tool for this. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm using a different brush. I'm using an acrylic paint brush. Now all of that color was added to the painting layer of the cars, which is separate from the sketch. Alright, now we're going back to the raindrops, and we're going to start adding these shadows. And you're going to want to do this on the very top of the raindrop. I'm using the airbrush, and keep in mind the harder you press, the darker it will be. And I believe I have this on an alpha lock, so I can only affect the inside of the raindrop. You can do that, or you can go to the selection tool and select the outside of the raindrop and then invert that, and it selects all the raindrops and will only paint inside the raindrop. So what I figured out as I was doing this, I start with a dark line by pressing harder, and I fade down. And when I say fade, what I'm doing is just pressing lighter as I go down. It's very time consuming, but if you do this, it'll pay off. It's going to look great. Now if you're not feeling this and you feel like it's too much work, what you can do is make a few raindrops and then use the selection tool and copy it and then paste over and over until you have enough raindrops to cover the windshield of the car. Because that's what we're actually looking through here, guys. We're inside of a car looking out into traffic as it's raining, and these drops are on our windshield. I wouldn't suggest doing that, but if you're just trying to have some fun and not taking this too seriously, go ahead. Make a few raindrops, copy and paste the rest of them. Guys, I am going to leave a link to my Patreon account. I just started this, so trying to kick it off. I do have a special deal going on. If you join now for I think it's tier 1 or tier 2 and 3, everyone who joins, I'll be creating a little sketch, ink sketch and watercolor sketch for each person who joins. So you may want to think about that if this is something you're interested in, and you want to help support me and my art. You may want to look into it. I'd appreciate it. I'll leave a link in the description to my Patreon account. And if you haven't yet, subscribe so you can stay tuned to everything I'm working on. Also, in my Patreon account, I will have these pictures available. These sketches that I'm telling you to upload, I'll have these available for you. I'm also going to try to actually have this broken down. I have this broken down into layers. I might even make my Patreons have access to each layer so they can see what this looks like in Procreate or Photoshop. Now, I first did this using watercolor and pen, and if you think this took a long time, man, that took forever. But the watercolor turned out beautiful. It's one of my favorite paintings I've done. Almost there, guys. I'm also going to show you how to, I'm going to take this as far as I can in Procreate. I'll be showing you how to export this using, exporting this from your iPad to your You know, I just really would love to work without all these stupid notifications. I'm going to be showing you how to import this from your iPad straight to your Mac so that you can open this up in Photoshop. And I'll be doing the airdrop, or using the airdrop. Alright, and at this point what I'm going to be doing is adjusting each layer. Going in, I'm adding the Gaussian blur to some things. Let's see, I'm on the cars layer right now, but now I'm going back to the ground and I'm messing with the brightness and saturation. I want the ground to be darker than the sky. And what I'm doing here, let me pause this. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to the vehicle layer, the car layer, and I'm using this tool right here and using the automatic selection. And I just pressed outside, I selected outside of the cars, and then I inverted that, and then it chose the cars. And then I'm going to be using, I think I'm going to be using the copy and paste, which is right there. Copy and paste. And then I'm going to flip that horizontally and stretch it out a little bit, and that's going to be the reflection of the cars. And then I'm going in and selecting each reflection and moving it closer to the cars. And now there I'm using the blur tools, using the Gaussian blur and the motion blur. And now I'm using the smudge tool and smudging those out, stretching those out a little bit. Isn't that cool? Now I'm adding a little bit of the blur to the car layer. Alright, now on a different layer you're going to have to put this on a layer that's going to be above everything but the raindrops. I'm adding the red for the tail lights, and I'm using a Gaussian blur and blurring that out. And now I'm going inside of those with a lighter red, almost a pink, and I'm going to blur that out. And that's going to be on a different layer, the pink. There's also, let's see, I chose a different brush to do this. There's an actual really cool brush. I think what I'll be using is luminance. There's a brush that looks pretty much like that, and I will use that. Not right there, but I must have missed it. But if you want to try that, it works pretty cool. And you'll want to use the Gaussian blur. You don't want those lines to be too sharp. It'll look funny. So now I'm going on a different layer, and I'm going to be coloring in the car. So this is hard to see, but this is like trees and stuff, and then there's a car right here. There'll be a car over here. Added a little bit of a blur to that. Now on a different layer, I'm adding the headlights. And then doing the same thing, putting a lighter color in on a different layer, then blurring that out. It gives it that nice glow look. Then I copied and pasted that, drag it down, guys, and blurred it to create the reflections. Now on another layer, I'm creating this right here. These are in a different layer, and what those are, they're like, it's hard to tell with this kind of style of painting, but it's you know, it's anything from buildings to street signs, highway signs. Let me go back a little bit. Alright, so after I do that, adding the signs and buildings, I'm going to work on the reflection of the main vehicles here. Choose a nice bright red, a different layer, just color that in where you think the reflection will be. Add a motion blur, a little bit of a Gaussian blur, and you know, it's pretty simple. Here I'm just cleaning up the airbrush with the eraser, just making the lines a little more sharp. Here we're given some illusions of road, the side of the road. This is what separates the two sides of the road. And a Gaussian blurred that out. Now we need some light reflection. And you know, this just shows the reflection of the sky. Helps it look wet. Sometimes it can look like rain bouncing up off the concrete. I also added some shadows in. Now, what you can do, because I know this moves along pretty fast, but I can't have my videos be, you know, hours long. So if it's moving fast for you, feel free to pause it, and it'll help you figure out what I'm doing. Also, like I said, you can leave a comment, and I'll do my best to get back to you. Alright, so here I'm going to start adding the highlights to the cars. I'm just using a white and soft airbrush. You don't want to overdo it. And adding a Gaussian blur to that. And I'm just going to each layer, I'm adjusting the brightness and saturation. I don't like it to be too saturated because it ends up just being too bright. You know, you get to a certain point, sometimes you need to stop and just take a look at it, kind of figure out what's off, what's going to make it look better. So here I created a new layer. I believe what I'm doing here is I'm looking for the rain. There's actually a rain brush here in Procreate. And it's going to be under elements, I believe. Not industrial, dude. Come on, you can find it. And there's the rain brush, and you can adjust the spacing and all of that. And I have the white chosen. And this was just an experiment to see how it works. Now, obviously it's very strong, but we can change how we have this layer shown as. There's normal, there's lighten, there's screen, and these all will change how this layer fits with the rest. So I'm trying to choose something that's not so overpowering. And then you can lower the opacity too. And you're going to want to do this, make sure it's right behind the raindrops as far as layers. It's not over the raindrops, it's going to be right behind them. Adding a little bit of motion blur to that. I felt like it smoothed out the raindrops a little bit more, or the rain brush. And here I'm just kind of experimenting with what happens with the brightness to that rain brush. See, I'm always being hassled by notifications. I need to get control of this. It's getting out of control. You're also going to want to hide your sketch. We don't want this sketch to show through. Here I'm just seeing what I can do to make this layer. I'm just seeing what's happening with each layer selection. Yeah, doing the same thing with the car layer. I'm seeing how it reacts to. Yeah, I didn't like that color burn. From what I found out, normal seemed the best for what I was working on most of the layers, except for the rain brush. Alright, so this is how we're going to share this. I chose a Photoshop format. That'll save the layers. I choose airdrop. I choose my Mac. And there it goes. You hit done. And export successful. Alright, good job. Alright, now we're in Photoshop, guys. And here we can see a little bit better. I got all my different layers. And the first thing I'm going to be working on is making these raindrops more see-through. Right now, you can't see anything behind the raindrops. They're too powerful. They're too opaque. All right, and the way I'm going to do that is, I'm sure if I would have handled it differently in Procreate, I might have been able to do it better. But I don't know if it was the way I set it up or what, or maybe Procreate wasn't strong enough. So I found by putting it in Photoshop, I can adjust the colors better. I just have a little bit more control at this point. And this is just for retouching. You know, that's what Photoshop's for. So let's carry on. Here, so I chose the raindrop layer and I lower the opacity. And see how you can see through them now? And you can see the color behind it. I also found a couple raindrops that were too opaque. I had to cut those out. Here I'm seeing what each layer looks like. I think it looks cool too without the raindrops. Like that. Let's see if we can go back to that. I'll pause it on there. Oh, look at that. That's pretty neat. Interesting, right? And I have flattened the image now, and I'm messing with all the colors. The vibrance, the saturation. I'm trying to make this glow, and I did lower the saturation in a lot of this because it just felt too overpowering. And when you lower the saturation, sometimes it gives it more of a natural look. That was the camera overlay. Here I'm using the channel mixer, going to each color and making adjustments. Hue saturation. of messed around with the render, with the camera flare. Didn't like that. Also wanted to see what it looked like as an oil painting. I did not like that either. Lens blur, there was a new lens blur. I wanted to see how that worked. It's pretty cool, but I did not use it on this. Here's the final painting. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Like I said, I started a Patreon account. If you guys want to sign up for that and help support me, that'd be cool. I can make more videos and all that jazz. Let's see. There we go. So here's the final painting. Have you guys create this? I know it's kind of hard to follow along, but I wanted to show what goes into creating something like this. I want to show you how to take a watercolor painting and some steps you can take to recreate that digitally. And like I said in the beginning of the video, we're not just putting this in Illustrator and making it a vector. We're recreating something digitally, and it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of options. There's some neat lighting effects. Like the tail lights and the headlights really add a lot to this. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope it wasn't too long. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, ring the bell, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.